What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. I'm your host, Junkyard James, and as you can see, we are running solo today. The sauce was a little spoiled, and so the sauce man, the sauce master, Mr. Cody Marinara, will not be with us today. We hope he feels better. Excuse me. And we can go back to normal next Thursday on the live stream, but you get me on a solo episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast tonight. And I thought nothing better than to run this show, since it is a solo show, like the solo Saturday shows typically go, and just kind of run it that way, and we get a live version of what a Saturday recorded episode typically looks like. With that being said, if you have any comments or questions or agreements or disagreements on what I'm saying, since this is live, go ahead, join that conversation. Comment your thoughts wherever you're watching. We're live on YouTube. We're live on my personal Facebook page. We're live on my personal X account. And so comment down below your thoughts on today's episode. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way. We have a Discord server for the Real Wrestling Community. That's the official Discord server of the Junkyard Media Group. Scan that QR code that just popped up on the top left-hand corner of the screen. Join the Real Wrestling Community and be part of the conversation when we're not live or when I'm not recording episodes. We can have a 24/7 conversation about sports, about pro wrestling, about just about anything you want to. Join the Real Wrestling Community by scanning that QR code. Excuse me, the pollen is back. It's springtime in the air. And so you might hear me a little allergy prone tonight. But I'll make it through today's topic. Thank you to all of our affiliate partners. That's W.GG. Use the code Beyond the Yard. Save some money off your order. WWE Shop, StubHub, all of those links and everything, as well as the link to the merch site for the Beyond the Junkyard podcast, all in the description box. Go ahead and check those links out and support the podcast however you feel is necessary. Today we're gonna talk about, as you could tell by the episode title, a little bit of a frustration that I have when it comes to AEW's women's division. And I feel like I talk about this a little bit, or a lot on this podcast sometimes, that I feel like there's a lack of direction with a lot of what the women's division does, that like it has its really high points, but has its really low points as well. And And so I just want to bring that back up because I was watching Dynamite last night. 2 hour show, a little bit over 2 hour show. And we'll get into the gist of it, but there was just a thought that ran into my mind, especially after Sunday's pay-per-view, where we had a women's match on the pre-show. We had, I think, 3 main card women's matches. And then we come into Dynamite following up. We get new women's tag team champions. We have this feud with Toni Storm and Marina Shafir, and Ronda Rousey shows up. And nothing really gets explained in the women's division. We only get really one segment on the show. Toni Storm was beat up before Dynamite, and they showed it on the social media page. This is a thing where I feel like Tony Khan should have aired this live on Dynamite. And so we're going to discuss here in a moment. I'm going to go pretty deep in depth with some things, some frustrations that I have on the AEW women's roster, because their roster is stacked with talent, but it almost feels like the roster is invisible in storyline. So with that being said, it's everybody's favorite part of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the monologue. So, like, have you ever sat there watching Collision or watching Dynamite and you just feel that switch flip in your brain again? Like your brain is saying, here we go again. We get 2 hours of television, a women's roster that's deeper than it's ever been. There's more talent on the women's roster than at any point in AEW's history. And yet somehow we are relegating or squeezing this entire women's division into one segment like it's carry-on luggage on a Spirit flight. Like we're squeezing it all into one bag so we don't have to pay those exuberant carry-on fees that Spirit charges. And it's not even just the time. It's not even how many segments we get. It's the feeling that you get when you know something matters on the show, or when something really doesn't matter on the show. Like, you can feel it in the pacing, you can feel it in the storytelling. But right now, it feels like the women's division in AEW doesn't feel like a priority. It feels like Tony Khan's obligated to put some sort of women's wrestling on the show, and so he throws 1 or 2 segments on the show. Look, and I'm not here to hate on AEW. I'm not here to hate on Tony Khan. I've defended Tony Khan more times than I can count. I've been called a bootlicker. I've been called a cocksucker, for Tony Khan. Like, AEW is my favorite wrestling brand. They changed wrestling. They made things exciting for me as a fan again. It allowed wrestlers to get freedom. It gave fans an alternative. And when AEW is good, like, it's really good. Like, overall, the Revolution pay-per-view might be my pay-per-view of the year. Like, AEW, when it clicks, it clicks. And when the women's division clicks, it clicks. But when it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's what makes it so frustrating. Because this isn't a company that can't do great storytelling, that can't use the talented roster that it has, but it chooses not to. Sometimes it chooses where to apply the greatness of the roster. And to me, it's just so frustrating. Like, this isn't 2020 anymore. We're not talking about a division that's trying to find its footing, full of, young, up and coming, maybe not TV ready stars trying to figure out this landscape. This isn't 2020 anymore. I mean, look at the names that are on the AEW women's roster. People like Megan Bayne. Like, she should be, or she should have that feeling of the final boss, of the baddest bitch in AEW the second she walks on the screen. Look at Lana Cross. Like, she just exudes aura. Look at Tekla. She exudes aura. Look at Britt Baker. Historically, maybe the most important woman in AEW's history. And then look at, like, Zayda Steele. Young. Hungry. Has an upside. Look at Billy Starks. Look at Athena. And then you expand out even further. Willow Nightingale. One of the most naturally gifted and liked baby faces in all of pro wrestling. Look at Deonna Purrazzo, one of the most technically credible, proven women's wrestlers to date. Gets no time. Look at Hikaru Shida. She was a cornerstone that carried AEW through the pandemic era. And where is she? Where is she at? This is not a weak division. This is a loaded division. Where are the wrestlers? I mean, look at this. And now these numbers are approximate numbers, but the number of days that it's been since that some of these women have been on AEW television, like on Collision or on Dynamite. Like Hikaru Shida, it's been like 500 or more days. Britt Baker, almost 500 days. Athena, she had her thing for All Out and then disappeared from the AEW scene back in ROH. Where is she? Why is she not brought to a bigger spotlight in AEW? Nyla Rose, one of the founding members of the AEW women's roster. Anna Jay, Ty Mello, Queen Aminata. Where are they now? Why aren't they on TV? Some of them might be injured. Some of them they just aren't using. And the question is why? Like, why? This is a loaded division. This is a loaded women's roster. And so what is AEW's answer to the loaded roster that they have? They give them half an hour, maybe an hour a week. Maybe, is that what they do? No. No, they give them one segment, 5 to 8, maybe 10 minutes every week. Both shows. Usually the women get featured more on Collision than they do Dynamite. It's like the division clocks in, has its 8 minutes in the spotlight, and then goes home. Meanwhile, we get some backstage promos from some faction for multiple weeks on end with nothing coming from those promos. We get a 12-minute match with no stakes. We get another segment advancing some storyline that seems to never reach its conclusion. And the women, they just 5 to 8 minutes a night. No time to breathe, no time to build the story, no time for new fans to really care about the women. Just in and out, and that's it. But here's the key to all of this. The matches aren't bad, the promos aren't bad, the stories aren't bad. They're just presented in a way to where they don't matter. They don't matter enough because they're not given the space to matter. They're not given the time to make them matter. And that is the issue with AEW's women's division. And to be completely honest, It feels intentional. Like over the past 2 years, you take a look big picture. If the story doesn't involve like Toni Storm or Mercedes Moné, it doesn't get the same level of care. It doesn't get the same build. It doesn't have the intricate layers. It doesn't get the same importance. Look at the biggest stories in the women's division's history over the past, I'd say, 3 years. It's the timeless gimmick. It's the final match between Mariah May and Toni Storm. It's Mercedes Moné and her year-long reign of terror, gaining all the belts. And listen, don't get me wrong, Mercedes Moné is the GOAT. She's the best women's wrestler of all time. My favorite women's wrestler of all time. But it's her building all these stories, the belt collector story. Like, those stories get time. Those stories get the big segments. They get character work. The rest of the division, though, they're fighting for table scraps. And you can see the difference. Like, Willow Nightingale should have a full emotional story arc. Deonna Purrazzo came into AEW with momentum and has done nothing with it. She's the ROH Women's Pure Champion, for God's sake, and she's more known on AEW for being the girl who's in the Southern New Hampshire University commercials during picture-in-picture than she is for wrestling in a match. Athena, where is she? She's a dominant wrestler. She's all elite, and yet somehow it feels and literally seems like sometimes she's just in another universe. Billie Stark should be getting built as the future of the company. The next best in line to run AEW, and yet nothing. Like, it feels like this isn't random. This feels like it's hierarchy. This feels as if it's done on purpose. Like Tony Khan is sitting there saying, there's levels to this shit, and if you're not at the top, you don't get the time or the level of importance in your storylines. Not to say that Tony Khan doesn't care, but he views it in a hierarchical system, and if you're not on the top, you're not getting top guy or top gal time. Like, and that's the part that drives me crazy. Because the fix for the AEW women's division isn't complicated. I feel like I've gone through solutions several times over the length of this podcast history. Like, it's not a complete overhaul. It's not like you have to fire half the division. You just need to be intentional with how you book the women's division. 2 women's storylines on Dynamite, another 2 stories on Collision, rotating segments, week-to-week continuity, evolution of character development, or I don't know. Use your YouTube feed to push the women on a women's only show. Use my AEW for a women's only show. You have the resources. Use them. Like, imagine it. Megan Bayne on this slow, dominant rise, kicking ass and taking names of every woman in the division. Britt Baker back in a real character-driven feud again. Like, Britt versus Thunder Rosa was fantastic. But towards the end of her time in AEW, her character development stalled out. Imagine Willow on a journey with the audience, in which the audience can emotionally invest in herself. Like a Hangman Adam Page level story. Imagine Athena presented like a top force on the main roster, not just in ROH, but on the main roster. Imagine if Hikaru Shida came back and was treated like she was a pillar of the women's division again, not just a placeholder in the history of time. Like, just use the roster. Like, my biggest complaint about the women's division has always been, and you can go through the tape, you can go through my social media, we use the same four people. It's Chris Statlander. It's Britt Baker at an earlier point in time. It's Mercedes Moné. It's Toni Storm. Mina Shirakawa. But there's no Anna Jay. There's no Ty Conti. There's like they get minuscule time and then they sit in catering for months on end. Just use the roster. That's how you fix the women's division. You just use the roster. Like, this isn't about me complaining for the sake of complaining. Again, I love AEW. It's my favorite wrestling company. It's way better than WWE. It's way better than TNA. This isn't complaining for the sake of complaining. This is complaining because there's missed potential. The roster is stacked. The talent is there. The audience wants the women's division showcased. There's a massive platform for women's wrestling in AEW. But every Wednesday and every Saturday, it feels like we get a trailer of what the division could be. And at some point, you have to stop asking, when is Tony Khan going to fix the women's division? When is Tony Khan going to book the women's division better? And then you have to flip that question to say, why hasn't he already done it? Why hasn't Tony Khan fixed the women's division? He had a massive opportunity on Wednesday, last night, to showcase your new women's tag team champions on the first show after they won the new the women's tag team titles. And they're nowhere to be found. Instead, you get told, if you want to watch Lana Cross and Megan Bayne, you have to tune in on one of two nights that we get Collision because of the college basketball March Madness tournament. That's a missed opportunity there. Especially on a Dynamite card that was booked very poorly, in my opinion. It was a weak show, one of the weakest shows they've had all year. There's no reason why we only had one women's segment on Dynamite last night. At some point, you have to ask, why haven't they already fixed the booking in the women's division? And then eventually, at some point, the question has to be raised of, is Tony Khan just that stubborn that he will never change how the women's division is booked? Like, was Jen Pepperman, lover, great storyteller, was she only brought in just to tell a great story with Mercedes Moné? Was that all she was done? Like, the fans will be patient for the women's division, but eventually patience wears thin. And they won't hold their breath forever. And I feel like right now, AEW has one of the, on paper, most talented women's division in pro wrestling history. And it feels like an afterthought. Like, and what if that never changes? Like, it won't just be invisible. It won't be just a frustrating thing for the fans. I won't be on this podcast a year from now saying, oh, it's just frustrating. A year from now, if it's the same way, it might be me saying this is one of the biggest missed opportunities and squandered opportunities in modern wrestling history. Let me say that again. If it doesn't change, then it's not just going to be frustrating to the fan base. It's going to be one of the most missed opportunities for Tony Khan to do something major in modern wrestling history. So let's talk about that women's segment real quick from last night. Right? So we got the match, Toni Storm versus Marina Shafir in a no holds barred match, right? And then, like I said at the top of the show, Toni Storm gets ambushed apparently from some random wrestler or person before the show starts, and instead of airing it for the first time on TV, they air it on social media. I didn't know what they were talking about at the top of the show because when I was a couple minutes late to turning on the show, and so when I know I'm going to be late to AEW stuff, I typically don't look at social media until I'm caught back up. I don't want to get spoiled by something that happens on the show. And so I don't look at social media until I'm caught back up. And then they show Marina Shafir versus Mina Shirakawa. And until they showed it again on the broadcast, I was confused as why the match was changed. So Toni Storm gets ambushed. Apparently, they're writing her off TV because she's legit injured. And that's all fine and dandy. But it's an afterthought. Let's go back to Sunday night. And I mentioned this on social media too. They ran through it's a good thing that AEW had 3 main card women's matches on their pay-per-view, and they had a match on the pre-show that was a women's match on the pay-per-view. Like, those are good things. But the problem is they ran through the women's matches within the first half of the show. So then you have like Swerve versus Brody King, great match. You have Andrade versus Bandito, good match. You have both triple threat matches. And you have your main event Texas Death Match. So by the time you're done with the show, anything the women did was an afterthought. You didn't see them for the last hour and a half to 2 hours. And there were definitely matches booked after the women's World Championship match that should have been on before the women's World Championship match. And so here's my theory. Tony Khan struggles to book the women's division outside of Mercedes Moné and outside of Toni Storm. And so this is where we're going to see what the women's division would be without them for the next couple of months until they come back. And I have a fear that we get the same kind of stuff that we're, we got on Wednesday. Just one segment. Or it's relegated to Collision. So you have to watch Collision to watch the women's wrestling. And you get 1 or 2 big stories, and it's the same 4 wrestlers again. Does anyone else see a problem with that? Because women's wrestling, like in WWE, I understand it, right? Because women's wrestling isn't the biggest draw in WWE. Like, if you look at the actual metrics, their women's segments are typically some of their least drawing moments on their shows. But in AEW, it's a different story. It's a different fan base. It's a bunch of people that love women's wrestling and they want women's wrestling, and they've been clamoring for a woman's match to main event a pay-per-view ever since the division was created. And it hasn't happened. And that's my concern, is that it may never happen. We may never see the full potential of what this women's division could be, because I don't know if Tony Khan knows how to book women's wrestling. I don't know if Tony Khan grasped the idea that some of their women are bigger stars than some of the top guys in the company. And it's not like this is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying Tony Khan is like sexist or doesn't like women's wrestling. I'm saying he's incapable of understanding how to book women's wrestling properly. He's not, he feels like his tag division and his top guys in the men's division and his TNT titles, and he has to have all these dream matches on the show, and there's just not enough time to put the women's wrestling in it. And so if he ever has to cut a segment, if he ever has to redo some booking, he's always cutting out the women's stuff because he doesn't know for certain how the fans will react to it, because he himself isn't comfortable booking women's wrestling. So the fix to that is to get somebody who knows how to book women's wrestling. And that's what I thought Jen Pepperman was brought in there for. Help Tony Khan book the women better. Give them more time. Especially with this idea that, like, if what Sean Ross Sapp says is true, and I do believe he is right, that we're signing more women. We can't just hoard the talent and not use them. And now you have Persephone on the rise. You got to figure out how to book the women better, give them more time. I don't know if it's giving them their own show, giving them their own pay-per-view, giving them an hour on Collision or on Dynamite just dedicated to the women. You got to figure out the fix, because the fans want it. And quite honestly, some of the women's wrestlers are some of the best wrestlers in general on the roster. So that's my plea. What do y'all think? Shoot at me in the comments. Is my theory correct? Is Tony Khan just a bad booker of women's wrestling? Is this done intentionally because Tony Khan has a favored few women that he keeps on his show that he knows will do well, and he's not sure, and so he doesn't want to take that risk? Like what is it? I don't know. Give me your thoughts in the comments. But this is like I said at the top of the show, this is a different style of the show tonight. It's not going to go the full length of time. We're going to treat this like a Saturday show and just kind of do that one long monologue there. But yeah, let me know, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This is a short show this week. Thank you to all of our affiliate partners, W Energy, WWE Shop, StubHub. All the links can be found in the description box. Like, comment, share. Let me know what you think about the show. Tell me what things you want me to talk about in the future. And we'll see you next Thursday on the live stream. Hopefully my co-host will be back from his illness next week, and we can bring it back to regular action. Join the Discord, scanning that QR code at the top left of the screen. Until next time, y'all, I'm Junkyard James. This has been another episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. And I guess I'll say the final words. Stay saucy. We'll see y'all next week.
This is wrestling without the filter.